Alrighty, I guess we can get started. Today's going to be a bit of a more structured presentation. Scott Keefer's going to share about the Archive It website preservation collaboration that we've done through the Sisters of Charity Federation. So I'll pass it right over to Scott.
All right. Hi, everybody. I was asked today to talk a little bit about some of the web archiving we do here with the Daughters of Charity and with the Sisters of Charity Federation. So I'm going to hit share screen here. A lot of this is going to be, I'm going to try and show and do, and we're going to see how well that works on Zoom. So I'm going to hit a share here. So there's two really big ways that web archiving is done. The first is through Archive It, and the second is through what is called Conifer. Archive It is a service of the Internet Archive, which is used to archive web pages and websites. There's two ways that it functions: through individually captured websites or through a subscription. The individually captured web pages can allow you to preserve one page at a time without paying for the full subscription. Their capture and playback system is called the Wayback Machine. So if you were trying to go and save an individual web page, and this is one I just have pulled up here. This is an article ran in Catholic News Agency on a display of artifacts owned by St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. You could go and take that URL and do a Control-C and copy it over to where it hits Save Page Now and hit a Save Page on it. And it would come back looking a little bit something like this. It looks pretty similar to the other page. You can see up here, there are 3 captures of it, all on July 2nd, 2021, presumably all by me. And there's the text and the information and the photo. If you go and click on the little Facebook link, you'll see that you get this error message that comes up because that Facebook page wasn't saved. But if you go and click down on one of these little side trending articles, you can see, oh, this one was saved. And it was even saved on the same day. There were 4 captures of this article between July 1 and July 3. It loads a little bit slower, but it also pretty much looks the same. And so if there are enough pages, you can sort of piece together a good portion of what's been on the site. Sometimes they might be from different days. And you'll see that these days will jump around if you go and click on a couple different things. But mostly, if you need to save one web page that is not that complicated, the Internet Archive Wayback Machine is a pretty good way to do it. The full subscription has a few major benefits. You can set recurring conditions for captures. So if you know that a web page is updated every week, every month, a couple times a year, you can set up a capture to be every month, every 2 months, every 6 months, twice a day, etc. But the big plus of it is that it can capture an entire website, take the top URL seed and the entire umbrella beneath it. I'm going to go and show you here. This is the public end of the Sisters of Charity archive page. And you can see all of the collections that are here. Sister Charity Nazareth, Sister Charity Leavenworth, Sister Charity Seton Hill. There's a little block of metadata up here. Sister Charity Federation, a description. And then this is our back end. Our current subscription, we've used 151 gigabytes. We have about 105 left. Here's a breakdown of the collections with some active seeds. Best practice does say that you should add metadata to every seed or to every capture. We admit that we don't do this, so do as I say, not as I do. If we were doing individual captures, it would be much, much, much more important to add metadata so that you or a researcher could find it later on. But as we stand, this description here for the Sisters of Charity Federation, or even if we go and just click one of these collections, there's a basic description archived since September 2016. For our purposes, it does pretty well. But I should say that you should add more metadata. So again, do as I say, not as I do. But as I said, the good things about Archive It are you can set up a recurring capture. To a certain extent, you can go back and add more to a capture when something didn't quite capture the first time. So if I go and pull up here, what's the date today? July 13th. We'll pull up one of these ones. So we have here this crawl. That's not a good one. That crawl's in progress. We'll do July 6th. See if we can still capture this one. So this is a capture. If we went and took a look at this and we saw, oh, there's still some parts of this that aren't quite done yet, we could go and restart the capture. I mean, we have a certain amount of days that you're able to go and do that. Or if you see a capture and some photos didn't quite fit in, you can go back and individually capture some of them. Collaboration is possible on a subscription, which helps bring some of the costs down. And just as a little sidebar, that 256 gigabytes of data costs about $4,000 a year. But that's split amongst 6 or 7 different groups, which brings that cost far, far down. 256 is one of the smaller subscriptions you can get. I believe there's one level smaller at 125, which presumably costs half the price. And you can see 151, we are not using the entire subscription. This started in September, by the way. If I had to guess, we'd probably get about 3/4 of the way full on this. And that would be the most that we've ever used in a single subscription year. And that's largely because I've been eating up a lot of the data with the daughters and not some of the other communities. If they have objections to that, sorry. Bad things about Archive It. The price obviously can be out of bounds for some groups. There are certain limits on ability to capture. YouTube does not capture well. Social media does not capture well. Anything that really requires human interaction. So if you have to go and hit a button to play a video, there's a good chance it won't capture well. And then there's just certain types of data that don't quite gel with it. The search functions can be limited, and I think Veronica's going to talk about that a little bit more. There are 2 different levels of capture, a more overview capture and a little bit more of an in-depth one. The in-depth one can get things that the big overview one will miss. But the more in-depth one, which they call the browser crawl, takes a little bit more time and it eats up a lot more data. And the last little thing negative that you have to know about Archive It is that you have to do quality control on your crawls. When there's a capture done, you have to take a look at it to see what it looks like and make sure it captured well. But I'm going to show you just here some of the captures and what they actually look like. This is a recent capture for Proyecto Juan Diego, which is a mission run by the Daughters of Charity down in Brownsville, Texas. This is a capture from July 7th. And so the wheel will spin for a little bit. You should also know that any type of web archiving you'll do, the crawls are going to load a little bit slowly, and that's sort of across the board. So you just have to sort of accept that. But if the page pulls up here, and this pretty much looks like a website. You know, there's this big graphic here with the spinner. You can slide across there. There's some drop-down menus, and they all drop down. Everything takes a look. You can click on a link, and it'll take you to another part of the site. Eventually. Come on. There we go. It will, at some point, be massively helpful for a researcher or an archivist or a sister looking at this aspect of the community. What did Proyecto Juan Diego do? That information is there and pretty well captured. If I can show another little capture here. This is from St. Joseph Services in Chicago. It's another mission of the Daughters. And this is from June 10th. So here's the website. It looks pretty good as well. There's this weird blank space here. And if you go to the live site, you can see, oh, there's this graphic here that for whatever reason didn't show up on the capture. Why did it not show up? I don't know. We tried to get it back. We couldn't figure it out. If you go in up here and you see there's all these things that look like drop downs and they don't really drop down. And if you go to the live site, you can see that they do drop down. Why didn't those drop downs capture? I don't know. We tried to get them back and we couldn't figure it out. If you click around, the information is all there and it is accessible. So everything under the About Us is there, but the dropdown isn't there. You have to go to the About Us and do a little bit of an extra step. So that capture didn't go quite perfect, but it captured enough. If we can go and take a step a little bit more away from a perfect capture, this is Seton Harvest. This is a capture from February of 2012. Seton Harvest is the community farm that the daughters run out in Evansville, Indiana. And you can see that there's some stuff missing here. And we kind of missed our, yep, that doesn't click. And we kind of missed our train on going and recovering a lot of it. Oh, these show up. These show up slowly, but they're there. But it's not perfect. And there's some stuff missing. And on some of the other captures, we can get it perfectly fine. But this one, we waited too long. And it sort of shows why you need to do quality control and try and do it sort of quickly. Most of the time, we do it very well. This one, we kind of dropped the ball on it. But as I said, some limits to web archiving in general, human versus machine interference, and very often social media. The other big way to do web archiving is a program called Conifer. And Conifer used to be called Web Recorder. They changed their name for boring corporate reasons. Conifer is a way to capture web pages at an in-depth level, and some of which requires some human interference. So if I go, I'm going to do a new capture here in a new collection just on something innocuous. We're going to call it Test Collection. And this, we're going to capture an Italian restaurant's website. This is Cucina Mazzi in Frederick, Maryland. I highly recommend if you ever stop by. But you can start a new session here and do a capture of the website. So if you go and do the capture, you can see this ticker will sort of climb up and it'll capture the page. And you can scroll down and make sure that everything makes it in. Let's check out their menus. And that ticker will climb up a little bit. Gluten-free, dinner catering, cocktails, family meal packages, and we'll do private events. And okay, we'll say that's a pretty good capture. You can stop it. You can add your descriptive metadata. It's an open box, which is both a plus and a minus. That means you can do it in whatever format you really like. There's no set structure. But if you want to put in a little more structure, then you have to go and do that yourself. What we prefer to do with the Conifer captures is to go and download them ourselves. So you can go and hit download. It'll download as what is called a work file, WARC. You can play back a work file in a browser. I highly recommend. Does that show up if I click that, the web recorder player? No, I have to hit share screen again.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that one, Scott.
Okay. Here we go. Now, okay. I do recommend downloading this. The web recorder player, it plays back the work files a lot better than a browser does. But you can go and open a work file. And here's my test collection, and it'll load up. In a moment. And here is my preserved website. So if you go and click menu, then here are all the menus. And I know that it's going to be there because the person who ran the capture, me, made sure to include this page in the capture. But if I go and hit hours and location, then that resource can't be found because I did not go and capture that page. So what we here at the Daughters tend to use Web Recorder for is for pages that, number one, have aspects that don't really fit Archive It, that are a one-time capture but require a little bit more structure and have a few things under an umbrella seed that require a little bit more human interaction, or that require some sort of manual input. So that require you to go and press a button to play a video. If there's an article about something the Daughters did on a local news channel, and there's, that structure where there's the article and then the little 3-minute play video. Whereas in days of old, somebody would go and put in a VHS tape and go and record it that way. We usually use Web Recorder or Conifer to go and capture those sorts of things now. And then we can download the work files and preserve them as born digital information. So make sure you have your metadata, include the metadata in whatever your cataloging system is, like they are a physical resource, multiple copies in multiple places, all of the things. And so I'd like to just show you two little things that we use Web Recorder to capture. This first one is an article about Sister Patricia Evanek, who is a daughter charity. And because of this is an article about her work and time at St. John's University in Queens. Because of where the article was and the graphics and all the stuff, it wasn't going to work to just do a control copy on all of the data. You really needed everything there for it to make sense. So it's something that we would run a Web Recorder on. And so, there's a picture, there's a date on the article, and all the information in the article, and it looks and runs exactly like a web page. You can't go and click give to St. John's University because that will take you to a blank page, but we don't need that blank page because that's not part of what we're capturing. We're capturing her work there. We don't need the St. John's giving page. And the other little bit more complex capture that I want to show you, this is the personal website of Sister Loretta Hogue, who is a daughter charity who does art ministry in upstate New York. And so her website includes information about her portfolio and what she does and where she's been shown. But it also includes images and information about a lot of her artwork. And so something like Conifer allows us to go and capture a representation of her artwork, even for the artwork that doesn't physically end up making it here to the archives. Stuff that is in multiple sizes, that is very big, that is in a lot of different mediums, sculptures, paintings, etc. But where somebody interested in her life or her work or sister artists or anything like that in the future will be able to go here and see what she made and get a little bit of information about it, even if it's in a representational form. And so this saves us a lot of space, and it's a lot easier to preserve 8 or 9 kilobytes rather than lots of bronze statues and mahogany doors. But that's some of the things that we do here with web archiving, and I believe that Veronica is going to go and take up searching on some of these systems.
Scott, before we switch over, Jennifer Younger had a question. What prompted you to use 2 different web archiving services?
So we use the Archive It for stable websites that we know get updated and that have umbrella seeds beneath them. So we know that Proyecto Juan Diego always puts new information up there. So we can go and set a recurring seed to happen every month. We know that something like the Daughters of Charity main page updates every so often. We can set that to update every 3 months or 6 months. We use the Conifer, number one, because it is free. It's not a subscription type of thing. And number two, we use that for things that we know don't get updated, or once they're up there, they're stable, but they're not necessarily in the Daughters' control. Like Proyecto Juan Diego, they're associated with the Daughters. That's all within our control. Something like Conifer is good for, like I said, news clippings, but sort of enhanced news clippings that might have to require a little bit of manual input to play a video or something like that. Or something like Sister Loretta's site where it's not changing anytime soon. How often do you run Archive It? Do you have a schedule? Yes. Like I said, you can determine when you run things. We run everything on a different schedule. I know that the Sister Charity of Leavenworth, they like theirs run weekly. Most communities run theirs monthly. And some of the sponsored works of the Daughters, we just sort of determine it based on how often the website is updated. So some of them we do every month. There's one we do every 2 weeks, and others we do every 3 months, 6 months, even a year on some of them that get updated less frequently. And those are good to use for things where you have some sort of in-house contact or communication, because you can go and ask them, how often do you put new information up?
And I will say it does change too. When we switched to a different website for the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, we found that whatever platform that they used, there was some kind of security concern where it was actually not capturing because it was blocking the crawl to preserve the website. So we had to push it back to at least a month and maybe even further from that. But in our old website, it was actually like Microsoft based, some kind of like archaic program from Microsoft. So when things dropped off of the website, there wasn't like a way to go back. So we had to save the old website weekly, or else the material would just be gone. So it was really helpful to have the range of captured schedules.
I know I harped on a lot of the negatives of these systems because they are things you need to be aware of, but on the whole, it is absolutely the way that most information today is promulgated. It's an important publication of the community, and that's really what you have to think of it as. It's a publication just like the magazines or the newsletters that are sometimes easier to conceive of because you can hold them in your hand.
And a lot of times now, these web-based publications, they're hard to even print if you wanted to have a print copy. The way that they're formatted, it just doesn't come together. We've ended up creating digital collections now because some of those that are made to be like through Constant Contact or through some kind of email source, they just don't print properly. So it's been great to preserve that because they are also shared on our website as well as that email. So.
I'm going to hit stop share now.
All righty, and I'll see how mine flips over. I decided to just do PDF of screenshots because I was concerned about the time, but it wasn't too bad in Scott's case, so I was glad to see that. This is our Sister of Charity page. So if you, let me zoom out here. So if I wanted to search our collection for just our Sister of Charity of Cincinnati page, this is the view that we have through the Archive It page. And I will say over the years, we've been doing this since 2016. This search interface has become less and less helpful. Like it takes a long time for it to process any search. And I mean like minutes, multiple minutes just to do, someone's last name that's pretty specific. It's not something that's going to come up 1,000 times. And I'm sure that there are more things that relate to Sister Augusta on the page. So I will say that at least right now, and I hope maybe that it might get back to more of the more robust search capabilities that it used to have. But right now you almost have to kind of know where things were on the website and find it through the capture. So find it through the view that Scott was showing of all the individual captures of the website. So for the one that I'll be showing, I don't know if it's right away or if it's my last example, I knew that it was published around 2017. So I just went straight to February 15th and looked for the article under resources. So it's just some of the ways that you can interact with the collection. So yes, I was going to say, so we had a collection of educational resources on our old website that right at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought I'd do some tailored links, because that's also something that you can do from the archived collection. There will be, as you see at the top, wayback.archive.org, and then it has the crawl number and then the actual page. So you can send someone a direct link to this page and they can access it. They don't need any subscription. So I had put together a set of tailored links to these Elizabeth Seton educational resources like crossword puzzles and word searches. But when people were transitioning to learning from home, they were really well received. We had quite a clamoring for whatever of that kind of information that we had. And so it ended up leading to our communications team. So this was a list of all of the resources that we had in that vein on our old website. And none of this transitioned over to our current website, at least at the beginning of the pandemic. So eventually, after there was so much interest in those items, the communications team looked to add a section in our historical resources page of the current website with a lot of that content, what they could share, what came through in the captures. So that's a real life example of how these things, when they were archived, so they didn't think at the time that they built the new website that they'd really be worth carrying over. Well, if we wouldn't have had them preserved, then they wouldn't have been there to share again. So that was really helpful. And then the last one, this is an article about our St. Rita's School for the Deaf, which I believe was the first Catholic high school for the deaf in the United States. And it's an article that was written by one of our interns in the communications department, who actually went on to work at our library at Mount St. Joseph University, Josh Zeller. And it's just a phenomenal overview of the whole history of St. Rita's and also its connection to a community that was formed there called the Pious Union Sisters, who actually ended up merging in with our community in the early 1930s. So it's a nice article about just the general history as well as that community. And then there's even some feature sisters at the end of their life and ministry. So none of the feature articles, for some reason, they didn't transition those over to our new website. So even though these were, there for years, I mean, from 2017 all the way through 2019, if they were considered a feature article, they did stay on our old website, but I don't know what the thought process was there. So this is something it's not on our current website, but I send the link almost monthly, because if anyone has any interest in St. Rita's, it's the first source that I like to send to someone. So it's really helpful to have in a web format that I can just quickly send a link over to. So those are just kind of some, as a user, I'm not one that I don't do all the captures and, behind the scenes, that's a little bit, although I'm very excited about Conifer and its capability of capturing video from news stories, because that's something we've really been struggling with. So I'm kind of curious, I might try to work on that. So thank you, Scott. That was really interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to share.
I will say, Veronica, if you try that, sort of the same way to digitize a reel of film or a cassette tape or something, you have to make it play the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
To go and capture one of those videos, you have to let it play the whole way through. So be prepared on that one time wise. If it's a 2-minute video, it's not a big deal. If it's an hour, sorry.
Well, it's kind of in line with what our sister Joyce, she did with VHS tapes. She had to actually have them run when she converted them to DVD. So that's why I was thinking if I could get her to embrace Conifer and actually understand it, she would just fly with that. I mean, she was really inspired by our Find a Grave Zoom a few months back, and she's transformed our whole page. I mean, everything that we talked about and beyond, she's really just on it. So that's why it's like, oh, it's exciting. I wrote that down. I've got to talk to her.
There are certainly more in-depth how-to videos. Look up both Conifer and Web Recorder. A lot of them were recorded before the name change. But if you look those up, there's some more in-depth type of how-tos.
Great. I guess it just open up to any other questions. I usually like to save the last half of the time to kind of open up for discussion and any other general things.
Hey, I have a question for either of you. I kind of missed a little bit at the beginning, but I saw on Conifer you were going through pages and then you stopped the recording. Do you have to physically go through the pages, or will it capture everything?
If you don't go through the pages, it doesn't get captured on Conifer.
Okay.
So that's why, that is part of the reason why Archive It is better in certain circumstances, because with Archive It, all you need is a top level seed.
Okay.
So if you have proyectojuandiego.org, it'll capture proyectojuandiego.org/about, proyectojuandiego.org/volunteers, proyectojuandiego.org/programs. But Conifer, you have to physically go and manually do it yourself.
Okay.
But at the same time, those things where you need that manual touch to get everything or to get the specific information you need, that's when Conifer is going to be the one you want to go for.
So following up on that, when you capture those things like that article about the sister from your community, and they have all those links to other locations in it, do you usually go and capture those links as well, or just the article?
Just the article.
Okay.
Unless for some reason you need those links, an individual article, stick with the individual page.
Okay. Thank you.
And I was kind of curious how you preserve those. Are they like an HTML file that or do you have to view them in the web recorder?
So Archive It is all viewed through their site. And if for some reason you would like some capture set to private, I don't quite know why. It's already on the internet. It's already public. But if for whatever reason, if you want the capture set to private, you have to go through their system and their server. Their servers are somewhere in the San Jose area. And they're preserving petabytes of data, multiple petabytes of data, which is a truly unfathomable number. For Web Recorder, you can set up an account and do a save system and make it public or private. But for the Web Recorder, because they're usually one-time things or small things or little things, those we tend to download and preserve ourselves. The file format is called WARC, W-A-R-C. And I think it plays back better if you download the Web Recorder playback machine thing. You can do it in a browser, but I just think it plays back better.
But it does have that capability to open like an offline web page?
Yes.
Like HTML?
Yes. Okay. Once you have the Web Recorder player downloaded, it's not functioning. That doesn't run on the internet anymore. That is functioning just on files it pulls from, I hit open file, just like you would on a Word document or a PDF or anything. So once it's there, and that's another thing, if we hit the point eventually, which we will at some point, where researchers are coming in physically to look at born digital materials, that's a good system where you can give them a dummy computer or a dummy laptop that has the Web Recorder player on it. And then they can go and that's your reading room system for Born Digital Files, or at least for websites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not in the too far distant future, really, if you think about it. But I was just trying to envision what it looked like, because I'm used to, if you've downloaded a website, you know, and it has the folders, and then when you click on it, it's an HTML file. Yeah.
The little symbol
Mm-hmm.
in your file, in your files, will probably look the same as your Internet Explorer download. But no, it's a different file format completely. It's a work file, not an HTML.
Okay. It sounds like it's much smaller than if you did the old HTML.
Yes.
It would take up quite a bit of space.
Hi, well, I was wondering, you mentioned Conifer is free, but I assume there are still data limits. With the free version, is that sufficient to capture what you need, do you think? Or
So there are data limits. Since we've always done it for smaller types of captures, and because we download each one individually, we've never had that problem. But if you go and try and build up something robust, then yes, there is a data limit.
So would you recommend, if someone was trying to save a whole community web page, do you think that would be possible with Conifer?
If you're trying to save it once, it probably would, depending on how complex or how many graphics and sliders and videos there are. But again, if it's something that is recurring and happens multiple times and is routinely updated on that website, then I don't know how I don't want to just outright recommend archive it there, because there's lots of other considerations.
Mm-hmm.
But I would, if you don't want to go the full archive it subscription, and your community website is one that's updated fairly routinely, what I would recommend is put a date on your calendar, talk to somebody who runs the website, talk to them about how often things are put up on the website, and put a date on your calendar every 6 months to take 15 minutes out of that day and go and run the capture again. If it's something that is updated regularly, it might be something that you want to look into capturing multiple times. And if you do it multiple times, then you probably won't run into a data problem.
Mm.
Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. So if it's separated, yes. Yeah, that does make sense.
So if you download directly from Conifer, it won't count as the quota for the data.
Correct.
Okay. And with the archive, I'm understanding correctly that that is stored with them, and that's part of the fee.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a procedure to go and download the data yourself. It is massively confusing, and I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Okay. So have you taken? I've noticed on the way back, there's been crawls that have hit things that related to some of our old websites. And if I wanted to bring those together, if I wanted to download any of those WARC's files, is that possible?
Through Archive It?
Or through the Wayback to just download the instances a certain site has been captured?
There is. I looked into it before and I couldn't understand it. So the answer is yes, but I don't know how to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think we tried. We found a version of our website, maybe from the 90s or the early 2000s, and I couldn't really figure out, unless I wanted to screenshot it or something. I couldn't figure out how to just download it and save collectively.
Yeah, you need someone with far higher IT knowledge than I do to understand it. The answer is technically yes. I don't recommend it.
I did want to mention too, one thing that came up with our Sisters of Charity Federation subscription is there were a lot of questions initially if we needed to have special access to our websites to actually have this crawl take place. And no, it's public websites, and this acts just like if someone was accessing it, like a user on the page. So there's no special permissions that need to be in place for the crawler to work. Generally, I will say we ran into some security concerns with our current website for our community, but I just remember that was a big sticking point for one of our community archivists, because she thought she had to collaborate with her communications team, and she was really making it more complex than it really is. So I just thought I'd mention that, because that really did come up. Yeah.
Did you have to have discussions with leadership to gain buy-in for the budgetary side of this? And do you have any tips?
Oh, this was actually approved right before I started, because I think it's been discussed like 2014, 2015, and then it actually was put in place in September, October 2016. So I was there for the first crawl, but in terms of the actual official approval from our community, that occurred right before I started. But I will say, we always just talk about that this is the community's history live, and for one community, it was really a struggle. They had just changed their website to mark a major anniversary, like their 200th anniversary or something. And they didn't want to continue pursuing the subscription. I thought, oh, not now, not all this information. You're going to lose that opportunity to preserve it. But it's a challenge. So I don't know what was happening behind the scenes with that community, but yeah, that's all I can say, that it is like Scott was envisioning, that soon, there will be people that'll come in to view digital content solely on site. And I can see it's things like these websites, like our old website, not much survived from it. So, yeah.
I would
Have you-
recommend.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, have you taken and either through links or through the Conifer downloads, brought these into digital collections, online digital collections or repositories?
Yes, in progress right now. So I guess no, but in progress right now.
We do have a digital repository through Ohio Memory. It's a state-run institution, but all we have now that's digital really are digitized films from the Vincentian Sisters of Charity. We haven't done any web-based content yet, but I'm just thinking, when you were sharing about those videos, we tried, there was some plugin with Mozilla Firefox. It was like DW Helper, where it would download videos from a website, but I used to use that, and I can't really get that to function as well as it used to. So that was really helpful. And I think if we are able to save some of those types of stories, that down the road, those are the kinds of content that we share. I don't know how, public domain and copyright wise, how long we can, but we had a video about the post office from the early 1980s, and that's on our community Vimeo page. So I'm sure they looked into it, but long term, yeah.
Yeah, that is copyright is definitely going to be a problem with this at some point, or there's going to be copyright questions. The Daughters of Charity own their own website. That's not a problem. Even Sister Loretta is a daughter. Her website is part of the community, and the community is going to own it one day. The daughters don't own St. John's University. So that webpage, I can claim fair use for using it here, but I technically can't go handing out that link to everybody because the daughters don't own it.
Mm-hmm.
How about for local storage of your Conifer downloads? Has that grown in size where you've had discussions with the IT and server space and money related to that?
It's definitely part of it. We don't have, it's definitely factors into that. Other forms of born digital media, videos and audio files mostly, take up way more space than a work file. and frankly, they take up way more space than the work files. That's a drop in the bucket compared to some of the other talks on server space. So if you do it enough, then yes, it would be. And it's a factor, but that hasn't been the straw that tipped the camel's back.
Of course, we haven't done any of this integration yet, but we do have a digital collection. We have a shared server that our department uses. It's what I guess you would call a cloud server. So all of our sisters that volunteer in archives, their computers can access what we call the S drive. And so on the S drive, we have digital collections. We have some departments that send flash drives of all their flyers and event program information per year. We've done some publications, like I said, that are better preserved digitally because they don't print very well. So we have like evoke, the vocational piece, and then there's like Ministry in Motion. Those are the two that are made for email, and they're just a mess if you try to print it. So those are on our S drive. So I could picture if we did a conifer collection with the work files, we'd just make a file under digital collections and say web preservation, and then have specific folders for like news stories about sisters, news stories about the community. You know, I can picture it kind of like that, if that makes sense. I hope that was your question. I missed the second half of Jennifer's question there. Says this site says it's legal to to link to copyrighted sites. Does this suggest you can send links to other sites?
I don't quite know what you mean by other sites.
Scott, it wasn't clear to me if you were, so I may ask you to repeat it again. Maybe I misunderstood. But I thought that you were saying you couldn't include links that went to other copyrighted sites.
So it is perfectly legal to go and capture web materials like this. What it is not necessarily legal to do is to provide and hand out copyright. It's the same with like library books or even newspaper clippings.
Scott, you said it, I couldn't quite catch it. You said it's not legal to.
I didn't finish that sentence. I jumped off on a tangent. It's the same way of sort of like newspaper clippings. You know, it is completely and totally legal to go and archive clippings from newspapers. Technically, if they are after 1925, you're not supposed to hand those out. You know, you can claim library privilege for a book, but to hand out unpublished copyrighted material where you don't necessarily, an archive doesn't necessarily own the copyright, you can preserve that. You can make it available on site, but you can't go and make that available just on the web. And copyrighted web materials function sort of the same way.
Is that because you, with a newspaper clipping, are you, I would have thought that fair use would apply. Because you're creating an archive, right?
True.
I mean, I know in our case with the digitized, with the Catholic News Archive, we have obtained copyright permission from all of the publishers.
Sure.
So I know what you're saying. We can not only preserve it, but we can make it accessible. And we did get their permission to do that.
Right.
But someone else can download a newspaper article from the Catholic News Archive, and they can include it in their own stuff. And I think that they can, in fact, include it in, for example, a published article if it's nonprofit, they're not making money on it.
Sure. For you can, but there are certain restrictions to it.
Okay.
Is what I'm
Okay, well,
getting at.
thank you.
Yes.
the details are always what are so confusing.
Yeah, it's copy. And again,
Complex.
please do not take my word as legal advice.
No,
I am not a lawyer.
but you are alerting us to, this isn't, you can't just willy-nilly.
Yes, you do have to consider copyright when you do web archiving.
For sure.
And if you're building a digital collection in the community's name, you know, like I was saying about our digital repository page, I would hesitate to put any, if we were going to save those news videos, I wouldn't put any of those up in the community's name. You know, like I said, the one in the 80s, I guess they got permission, or it was a time lapse thing. Maybe the channel doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. But that's the only one I could think of that I was like, oh,
Or
you have one up.
I mean, there is also the chance, Veronica, that they just did that illegally and nobody ever stopped them.
And I mean, it was about the mother house, and it was a very nice piece about, we had a post office just up till 2019, actually. And we are our own city. We're Mount St. Joseph. We have our own zip code. And, you know, it was all about how the sisters operated it. I think even in that time, we still had a postmaster general, you know, sister who took the test and, you know, was certified with the post office and all that. But yeah, just it's a good point. I might mention that to them. Alrighty, well, we're almost to 4 o'clock. Does anybody have a last question or any other comments? Okay, well, thanks so much, Scott. I really learned a lot, even being a part of the Archive It subscription for so long. It's nice to hear and see some of the behind the scenes views. I hope it was helpful for everyone. All right.